শোনো বঙ্গবন্ধুর অসমাপ্ত আত্মজীবনী, আকাশে বাতাসে ওঠে রনি। চলো পড়ি, চলো শুনি, চলো পড়ি, চলো শুনি। পাতায় পাতায় বাংলাদেশের ইতিহাসের শুনি ধ্বনি, প্রতিধ্বনি, শুনি ধ্বনি, প্রতিধ্বনি। শোনো মুক্তি চ্যানেলে বঙ্গবন্ধুর অসমাপ্ত আত্মজীবনী। চলো পড়ি, চলো শুনি, চলো পড়ি, চলো শুনি।
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Unfinished Memoirs, showcased by Mukti online, the channel BD. All the support and editing has been done by Nasruddin Mukti, who is the president of the Bongobondhuo Sheikh Mujibur Rahman London branch, and as well as a big thank you to our coordinator, Councillor Abdul Aziz Toki, who is also the advisor of Bangabhondo Sangskritik Jote UK. We have a really amazing episode for you today. I've got a great variety of guests to give their insights and their thought-provoking opinions on the content that we're going to be talking about today. In this episode, we're progressing further into the book. So if you were here for the first episode, then you'll know that we were started very early on in his career and life. And I've chosen these passages because they really showcase Bongobondhu's ongoing interest in social justice and his rebellious nature against oppression and oppressive forces. So I'm going to be now introducing our guests. So just a warning to you all that we have been having some issues, so do bear with us as we go on with this episode. We're all doing the best that we can. And if you are watching, we are broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube, so please do like, share, follow, and share the content with anyone who may be interested. So my guests are as follows: Dev Saha, and columnist and poet Rumi Hook. Rumi is currently coming on now. Just bear with us as we have and we just go on as the day. So in this episode, as I said, we're going to be going further into the content and the really, like, where you really start to see Bongobondhu's independence come through. He's really making his own in his career and his own in finding his way in politics and his sort of mark on the world. So I'm going to be starting first of all with Dev. Dev, so how are you, Dev?
I'm very good. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on. I'm really happy with the guests that we've got today. They've been great sports. Dev, I'm going to let you go ahead and read the passage, and then we're going to get on with the content. So, as you are.
Thank you. In 1944, it was decided that the Students' League would organize a conference for that year. For a long time, the annual conferences had not been held. I was quite popular in Calcutta. In fact, no one would dare oppose me in Islamia College. I'd worked for both the Muslim League and the Students' League. If we organized a conference in Calcutta, no one would speak up against it. I should add that Mr. Suradi was fond of Mr. Anwar too. He was almost back to normal health by this time, but people from Dhaka Student League were from our camp did not like him. Only Shah Ajijur Rahman from Dhaka was on Mr. Anwar's side. Mr. Shah was a wonderful speaker. I had heard him speak first in Bogota. Finding it impossible to organize a conference either in Dhaka or in Kolkata, Mr. Shah called a provincial conference in his own district of Kushtia. This was the time Mr. Anwar's faction was feuding with Mr. Nuruddin's. Mr. Anwar sent someone to request me to work with his faction. He also offered me a position if I did so. I told him I wasn't interested in a position and would rather discuss the situation with everyone. On the other hand, Mr. Nuruddin's faction also wanted to talk things out with me. I would have to take sides sooner or later. I was that important in Kolkata at that time. This was because Mr. Fazul Qadir Chaudhry had quit his studies by then. Mr. Zohir Uddin did not care for student politics and was concentrating entirely on the Muslim League. All of the students of Calcutta would visit Mr. Abul Hashim. I had become friends with everyone who would go to him for classes. Among those who used to work selflessly for the Student League at that time were Nuruddin, Burodwan's Kondukar Nurul Alam, and Sharifuddin, Silet's Muazzem Ahmed Chaudhry, Khulna's Ekramul Haq, Chittagong's Mahbub Alam, and Nuruddin's cousin, S.A. Salah. In the end, I joined this group because we were all fond of Mr. Suradi and Mr. Hashim. On the other hand, Mr. Anwar's faction was devoted to Mr. Suradi, but couldn't stand Mr. Hashim. When Mr. Suradi saw the extent of the difference between the two factions, he called us in a bid to reconcile us. However, he failed in his attempt. This is when I got into an argument with Mr. Suradi. He wanted to give Mr. Anwar a prominent position, but I declared this was impossible. I pointed out he was a divisive force in the party and wasn't the type who encouraged good workers. Also, he never filed a statement of accounts. All of a sudden, Mr. Suradi burst out, "Who are you? You are nobody." I retorted, "If I'm nobody, then why have you invited me? You have no right to insult me. I will prove that I am somebody. Thank you, sir. I will never come to you again." I walked out of the room, uttering these words at the top of my voice. Nuruddin, Ekram, and Nurul Lam joined me in protesting against Mr. Suradi. The secretary of Bulbul Academy, Mr. Nurul Huda, was very fond of Mr. Suradi. He would always stick close to him. All of us used to treat him with respect. He had excellent manners. If anyone was in the spot, he would be there to help the distressed person, no matter what the time of night it was. Mr. Huda was present at that time. While I was storming out of Mr. Suradi's house, Mr. Suradi asked if Mr. Huda could bring me back. I was so angry that I burst into tears. Mr. Huda managed to catch up with me. He told me that Mr. Suradi was shouting from upstairs, asking me to come back. My friends had also been telling me it would have been bad manners to ignore Mr. Suradi's request. So I decided to meet Mr. Suradi once again. Mr. Suradi told everyone present, "Go and work for the elections. Don't fight each other." Then he called me affectionately to his own room. He said, "You are being sentimental. I wouldn't have said these words to anybody else. Because I care for you and treat you like my own. I felt I could say such things to you." He then rubbed my forehead affectionately, and that he really meant what he said, and loved me and cared for me. And I knew through all his subsequent actions and in everything he did for me, till his dying day. Now when I think of him in jail, I remember what he had told me then. Even in 20 years, he never veered from what he said that day. Indeed, from that day, every day of my life, I was blessed with his love. In all these years, no one could take me away from him, and I didn't let anyone deprive me of his love. Thank you.
Thank you, Dev. That was incredible narration. I'm really happy with that. So I chose this passage because in this very emotive passage, we see how the elders around Bongobondhu had such a profound effect on his life. And the purpose of the show, the reason why we started this show was that we really wanted to bring all the generations together. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been commenting, who's been cheering Dev on as he's been speaking. That was really nice to see. So like I said, the purpose of this show was to really bring all the generations together. So I wanted to discuss how important it was for younger generations to have mentors and role models. Even I myself, I'm in my mid-20s, but I have coaches and I have role models and I have mentors. So every successful person has had a mentor or a coach in whatever area of their life they wanted to improve. And Bongobondhu had mentors who really pushed him to his limit and challenged him in his weaknesses. And often one of the hard things that I found growing up, and I'm seeing this in my brother who's your age, like just a little bit older than me there, often one of the hardest things about growing up is coming across situations that are outside of our comfort zone. And we experience failure for the first time, we experience heartbreak for the first time, or grief. And in a perfect world, we could be able to turn to our elders or our parents or anyone and ask for guidance, but that's not always the case. We don't always have, like, so Bongobondhuo had a very open relationship with his mentors. He could be as outspoken as he wanted to be, he could be as honest as he wanted to be, and they could do that to him as well. But that's not always the case, and often both generations feel as they can't really speak to one another. So why do you think that it's so important for younger generations to have a mentor or a role model?
The reason why why I think that younger generations need mentors or teachers is that they need someone to look up to, someone that they can learn from. At which time they can have the same knowledge as their mentor or teacher, and then become better in that area, and then become a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially if you're someone, I think the best way to succeed in life is to be quite growth orientated. So you're someone who wants to do better. And I think it's really important to remember that, I myself, sometimes I get quite frustrated with my parents if they're telling me, giving me advice, but then I have to remember that they've got like 30 years on me. They know more. And there's times where, yeah, there needs to be more of a dialogue between both generations. So why do you think that children themselves are unable to speak to their parents or elders in moments of weakness? And how can we fix this problem?
Children might feel unable to speak to their parents or their elders because they might feel that they won't understand or comprehend what they're going through. But and
Yeah.
also they could also feel that their parents would be angry or will judge them if they made a mistake. We can solve this
Yeah.
problem by parents telling their own children, say, it's okay to share your problems, and then we won't judge you or get angry at you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's really true. Yeah, thank you, Dev. That was really well done. And thank you for the passage. And now I'm going to move on to Shanvita. Shanvita, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I also just want to take a moment to, before we go on, I'm just going to explain. I want to give my gratitude to Shanjita and Winnie because they really came in when we needed help. So last Sunday, for example, we had a lot of trouble with guests, and Shanjita and Rumi really came through. So I just want to say thank you to both of you for coming through and helping us. I'm really, really proud of the caliber of the guests that we've got today. And I'm really glad that the world basically gets to see what you're capable of. And I wanted just to say a big thank you to everyone who's been liking, following, and sharing comments on the program. That really helps us, and the feedback really helps us. So Shanlida, I'm going to let you get on with your passage. So for context of the audience, this passage is about the division in politics. Go ahead, Shanjita.
Okay, thank you for having me here. It's a great honor. So I'm going to start reading the passage. No more elections were held by these people till 1947. Both the Muslim League and Student League split into two factions from then on. One faction was identified with the names of Mr. Shuwadi and Mr. Hasim. The other faction was associated with Mr. Kawaja Nazimuddin and Maula Akram Khan. All of us held Maula Akram Khan in their high esteem. As a matter of fact, we had scrolls with him. It was at this time that something else happened that created sensations. After consulting Mr. Suwadi, Mr. Hassim brought up the draft manifesto for the Muslim League. It was noted that Muslim League was a political organization and therefore should only involve itself with political issues. It would have indicated that kind of economic structure Pakistan should have once the nation had been created. It suggested that the zamindari system should have been abolished. It included many such as radical statements. Inevitably, there was an outcry as soon as Mr. Hassim manifesto was published. Those among us were young or were students or were progressive-minded, took up these points and began to speak out them. We needed to realize that Pakistan, and it was important to spell out what kind of economic and political framework Pakistan would have once it was created. Mr. Hassim would spend hours indoctrinating us into these issues. He would come to Dhaka for a few days at a time and would sit down with the party workers discussing these issues. He would also spend a lot of time in Calcutta Muslim League office for similar meetings. He would always keep in touch with these party workers. I accompanied him with many meetings. It would be wrong of me not to mention the prominent student league of the time in my narrative, since he did not belong to any faction and did not tolerate wrongdoing. Indeed, everyone knew him to be outspoken of the interest of truth. All the leaders treated him affectionately. Everyone now knows him as the Judge Abu Said Chaudhry of the Dhaka High Court. He tried his best to reconcile the two factions. Mr. Sudari would pay ahead to what advice Mr. Chaudhry had given him. Two other men who were judges now were also prominent at the time are also mentioning too. One of them, Mr. Abud Hakim, was one of the vice presidents of the Taylor Hostel and was actively involved in student politics. On the other hand, Justin's Sumun Hakim was not involved in student politics when he was in Calcutta. He was a good student and was always focused on his studies. At the time, and after Mr. Nazim Ahmed was killed, Mr. Samsul Haq led the Dhaka students along with Mr. Samsuddin Ahmed. At the late Mr. Uziz Ahmed, Kondokar Mashtaq Ahmed, and a few others, all of them were devoted to Mr. Suwadi. Afterwards, they became followers of Mr. Hassan. All of them felt that in addition to working for the Students' League, they would also have get involved in other activities of the Muslim League to prevent it from being manipulated to coteries. Mr. Hassan opened a branch of the provincial leagues in 150 Mutulki, Dhaka. Many of them worked as full-time workers and was the case to Communist Party workers. Mr. Samsul Haq was in charge of this office. We, on the other hand, were full-time workers at the Calcutta office. Although we had room to be hostile, I used to spend most of my time in the Muslim League office. I would study at night. From time to time, I would attend classes in college to ensure that I fulfill attendance rules. But what would have been the point of studying if we didn't achieve Pakistan? Many of us had this question in our minds. The factions were to confront each other again when Muslim League was about to hold the next meeting. We decided that we would elect Mr. Hassan General Secretary and would have his manifesto adopted by his party. On the other hand, our opponents have resolved that they would not allow Mr. Hassan to be secretary. Many leaders were supporters of Mr. Suwadi, but while they followed him, they would not stand Mr. Hassan. In the end, Maula Akram Khan, Mr. Surawadi, and Mr. Nazir Uddin met to the select panel. The resolve that Mr. Hassan would commit was subcommit was firm to report on the manifesto. If I remember right, they also agreed upon in any case if I remember correctly, this was they had decided. However, I cannot recall what they had agreed upon. In any case, Mr. Suwadi declared that this wasn't the time to get involved in fights. Such issues, since our general goal was to achieve Pakistan. If we confronted each other now on other issues, the movement of creating Pakistan would have to take back a seat.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So this passage really talks about the opposing sides within the political parties that were growing at the time. They were confronting each other on different issues. And it's the first time where we actually really see Bongobondhu talk about the lack of harmony between political figures. So the reason why I really wanted to do the show is because I really believe that the lessons we can learn from the unfinished memoir is really relevant to the present day and what we can learn from them. So in Western countries, for example, we've witnessed many divisive elections and by-election built on infighting and personal agendas. And we're actually in the middle of such a tense political situation with America, where people feel very conflicted, voting for either party. But I also saw that in the general election that we had last year, because for different reasons, either leader doesn't really resonate with others, and we've seen this in the general election in our own country. So on top of this, there's really a lack of harmony within either party. So why do you think that there's so much tension in political parties? What motivates politicians to push their own political agenda rather than to think of the collective goal?
I feel like there's so much tensions between political parties because they all have different ways to achieve their certain goal. So some political parties might focus on, let's say, the environment or rights, while others will mostly focus on unemployment or like increasing the GDP. So that, since they all have different agendas and different viewpoints, that might create the tension. While sometimes when they have similar goals, everyone wants to take the credit to their achievement. So they all want to push their political agendas upon others. So when they do reach the point of success, they could take the congratulations in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. And I personally believe that it's my personal opinion that we need more progressive people in politics. Thank you very much to everyone who's been commenting, by the way. I've been seeing those. We're just on a roll here. So we need more progressive people in politics, I believe, but quite human-centered people. As you said, that there's a lot of people, I believe, now, unfortunately, like politics has put a bit of a sort of a bad tone to it. So a lot of people, human-centered people, very progressive people, are scared of going into politics because they're terrified of being corrupted or losing their roots. I've seen, politicians that I've loved at the beginning of their careers, people that I really thought are going to make change, and then as they go up the ladder, they change their tune or they really forget their roots. So how do you think people can actually really push for social change and be brave and have that platform, but not be really tempted or swayed by any personal agenda?
Recently, or during lockdown after the death of George Floyd, I realized a lot of people have been contributed to more political stuff. Like I've noticed on my Instagram stories or Snapchat stories, more people are posting about the leftist party and stuff like that. So I feel like such bad, whenever there's something bad going on and people start reposting it, the message starts spreading, especially like, let's say, whenever the Black Lives Matter movement started going around, more people were politically active. Or when the 9/11 happened, that's when most people turned conservatives and they wanted the borders to be blocked to prevent major terrorist attacks. So that's, in a way, a great way to get people involved, but also somewhat frightening that the only reason why people even get involved is when something really bad happens and would actually affect them in the long run. A great way to not push people's agendas, but like talk about your political views is by posting on your social media. But there's bad things about it, like not fact checking, because whenever you go through Instagram, there's a lot of they'll manipulate numbers and statistics to make it seem like they're correct, but when you actually research about it, it's not true. So I feel like most people, instead of just posting it on the social media because they've read it somewhere, they should look more deep into it, because I feel like that itself shows that you care. You can't just post it and not research about it, because that just shows that you're just doing it for the clout or you're doing it as a trend.
Yeah, I agree. I really love that you mentioned that, because what I found is when the Black Lives Matter movement, that's been going on for so many years, but I feel like people have been standing on it. That's been happening since Ferguson. But what I found is a lot of people, like you said, is a lot of people, it was a knee-jerk reaction to automatically post something, automatically talk about it, rather than actually doing the research and realizing is what I'm doing quite performative rather than actually doing the research. So I really love that you mentioned that. Thank you for that. And I think that's so true. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a platform. I think social media can be very powerful. But one thing that people have to remember is what a lot of people don't realize is people see things off social media like it's fact, like you said, like it's fact, not realizing that a lot of, social media are on platforms that are organizations. So Facebook has been in trouble because it doesn't fact check. We know that Zuckerberg has been in Congress, being interviewed, investigated because Facebook has been, allegedly like it didn't fact check a lot of it. We let a lot of right wing movements post anything without fact checking. The same with Twitter or Instagram, and people really depend on these platforms. It isn't particularly healthy. What I did really love is that a lot of people did take a step back and do their own research. But I think that's something that you've really brought in, that people need to take more of a heart-centered route to it rather than doing it for clout, as you said, or doing it for attention, because otherwise it's not genuine. And that's what I found now. Like the protests, by the way, are still going on in America. They're still going on, but we don't hear about them because celebrities are really into it, have now decided that's not on my brand. And people need to realize, I think one of the reasons why a lot of people, politics, for example, gets quite, selfish is because it's a very knee-jerk. We're always just reacting to whatever is popular at the time. But that's not the way to make long-lasting change. You have to really dig your heels in and do your research and do the work a lot of people are willing to do. But I love that you said that. Thank you very much for your input.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to move on. Yeah, thank you, Shanti. And also thank you for coming in last minute to help us with the show, by the way.
It's
You're
okay.
a great help. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Now we're going to be moving on to Rumi, who is a return guest. Hi, Rumi. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for being such a great help.
Hi, Sajiti. How are you?
Yeah.
First
I'm
of all,
good. How are you? I mean, the sun's out.
I just wanted to apologize for the technical difficulties that I have had. But glad to be here and lovely to see you guys.
Yeah, no, I want to also say thank you for that. And I also want to thank everyone. So a lot of people, what they don't see is they don't see the stuff that goes on backstage. And we did have problems coming into the show. I just want to be great thank you to Rumi, and everyone, our team as well, not only Mukti and our advisors as well. They really came through and helped us. So I want to just say thank you to everyone, keeping a level head and making the show what it is. The show would be nothing without its guests. So I want to say a big thank you to the participants. So Rumi, in your own time, we're going to let you get on and read the passage.
Excellent. At this time, the Muslim League government of Bengal was dissolved. The governor of Bengal took the administration of the province in his own hands. Mr. Shahwardi noted that in the wartime situation, businessmen had begun to stock clothes to sell them in the black market later. On the one hand, the food situation was deteriorating, although Mr. Shahwardi was working day and night to bring things under control. On the other hand, unscrupulous businessmen were playing with the lives of ordinary people for their own selfish reasons. Mr. Shahwardi ordered his staff to encircle the warehouses of the Marwari businessmen in Bara Bazar. The whole of Bara Bazar was encircled accordingly. Thousands of yards of cloth that had been stockpiled were discovered. It was found out that all the buildings had warehouses that were hidden from public view. Similar instructions were sent to uncover stockpiled food grain throughout the city. But the Marwari businessmen were not to be defeated easily. They now spent a lot of money and managed to buy off quite a few members of the legislature so that they could have the government dissolved. The result was that the government lost a motion against it by just one vote. Fortunately, this was not a vote of no confidence. Mr. Khwaja Nazimuddin declared that he would call for such a vote the next day. If he failed to win the motion, he was willing to resign. The Speaker of the House was Mr. Noshar Ali. The next day, he ruled that a vote of no confidence had already been passed against the government, and so there would be no need to have a formal vote of no confidence one more time. I was present with a few students in the assembly at that time, when the news spread outside that the League ministry had been dissolved. the MEMOIRES began to celebrate their victory. I found the situation so intolerable that I assaulted some of them. Some of our workers began to beat up the MEMOIRES until they fled the scene. Mr. Muhammad Ali rushed out and tried to restrain us all. Hindu leaders came out in protest. In any case, after some time, things cooled down and we left the area. The Muslim League government had been in office for around 1.5 years, although the governor had retained ultimate control of the province in his hands. I knew that Mr. Shahrwardi was a member of Calcutta Club. Whenever he was in Calcutta, he would try to spend an hour or two there. However, from the time he became Minister of Civil Supplies, he would never find the time to go to the club. He would work in his office till midnight. Nuruddin and I would often go to his house after midnight to meet him and to discuss the political situation, since he never had the time to do so during the day. He had instructed us to meet him then. Till that time, I had no idea that members of the Legislative Assembly were capable of being bribed in such a manner. These were the people who are representing the province and the masses. I remember that we had been given the task of guarding a few members so that they could not desert the party. I do not want to name them, since many of them are dead now. One of these MLAs was confined to the Muslim League office. He tried to leave it again and again, but failed to do so because of our vigilance. After a while, he told us, "Let me go. Don't worry, the opposition is offering us some money, and if I make some money this way, why should it bother you all? For in any case, I will vote for the Muslim League." I looked at him incredulously. He was an old man and looked impressive and was educated. How could such a man say such things to us? He would accept money from a party that wasn't his own and yet not vote for the party despite being bribed to do so. To what depths have the people of our society sunk? We had to drag this gentleman into the office from the street. All the time, he had been looking for an opportunity to switch over to another party.
Thank you very much, Rumi. So this passage really builds on the earlier questions that I was talking about with Sanjit about corruption. And again, this is the first time that Bangabhondo really is confronted with a very dark side of politics, where money is power and some politicians have their own self-interest. So, as I was saying, we're living in a very tense, dark, unprecedented time in terms of politics. This year has been a real awakening for those who sort of turned a blind eye of being quite ignorant to the corruption in our society within the system. So, as Sandita mentioned, we saw this with the Black Lives Matter movement, and people really became active agents of social change, which is as we're leading up now, we're only a month away from the American elections, and all people campaigning against oppressive measures, as we've seen with the pandemic in Britain, for those people who are vulnerable in society. And as I said, some are waking up and some are becoming more disheartened. And for the younger generation, I really do believe that this is a real make or break on what they fight for and what they stand for. And one phrase and quote I saw so much when the Black Lives Matter movement really took off is the saying that, if you're neutral in situations of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor. So if you witness corruption, you could speak against it. So what advice would you give to those who are younger, or maybe even not even younger, just those who feel afraid of speaking up or believe that it's really not their place to have an opinion in the time of social change?
First of all, Sajiti, due to the device or connection today, I really can't hear you clearly. However, what the part of the question I did hear is, if I'm correct, please do correct me, is that what you think my advice would be to the younger generation or anyone. Yeah. Okay. So what I firstly would like to say is, if you want to see a change, you have to first make the change yourself, make yourself change, and only then can you actually advise somebody else. So first of all, you have to get your own morals correct. Am I doing the right thing? Question yourself, and then think, well, yes, okay, this doesn't really affect me in any way, or my family, or my friends, but so why should I bother? No, actually, today it doesn't affect you or your family members or your friends. Tomorrow it might, and maybe it will never affect you. However, if this is an injustice happening to somebody and you just stand there watching, looking like an onlooker, what does that say about yourself and your own morals? So I would advise you to say, whether you think it's your place or not, try to do the right thing, try to raise a voice, try to say how you feel, why you feel it's wrong, try to do the research before you actually speak as well. That's very important.
Thank you. So it seems that there's many parts of society that quite need changing. So it can become quite easy to become overwhelmed with it all. So what would you say to the younger generations who are seeing the corruption that's been happening for a very long time and feel quite helpless about what to do?
As we can see from history and the passage that I have read just now, corruption has been happening from day one, everywhere, not only in Bangladesh. I would say from Adam and Eve time, it's been happening everywhere. However, if we are to survive as a human race, we cannot feel helpless, hopeless, and we can't give up. And so it is, again, I would say it's up to me to raise that voice. It's up to me to say, no, I will not stand for this. And if it's a right movement that you think this is not right for the society, I need to talk. And if it's only by yourself, stand up, talk, be your own person, and just say how you feel and why you feel, because you can make the change. And I would like to add, our younger generation, you are not only our future. You're what the actions that you decide to take today makes our future for tomorrow. So please, small or big, whatever steps you do decide to take, and if they are the right steps, you are doing a greater good for the whole world. Please don't feel hopeless or helpless. Yes, there is corruption all around us, but we have to keep ourselves pure, and that's when we make a change.
And when I was doing research for Take on the World, one of the things that a lot of academics are looking at, because now we're seeing a lot of like authoritarian leaders in power right now, and the way that right-wing movements, the way that they become powerful is they want you to be tired. They want you to be tired. They want you to feel helpless. They want you to be like, you know what, I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to give up. I think also what a lot of people don't realize is there's so many things that we take for granted. So, for example, women, the right to vote, like that's something that we fought for. You know, the fact that we British Bangladeshi people have like rights on level with, so I have rights in the workplace that is on level with my white counterpart in work as well. And I need to realize that that's something that my ancestors fought for and I need to uphold. But also you have to think about, you know, we are the future, but also you have to think about, what am I going to leave for my descendants? What do I don't want to look back and realize that in times of social change, like when my, you know, in the future, in the long future, when my grandchildren ask me, what did I do? I don't want to have to lie. I didn't do anything. You know, I did something when I did it. And I think that's really, that's something that we really have to remember, because it's really easy to look back on history and see it as like stories. We're not realizing that this was happening in the 60s. We are just living, history does repeat itself, but it's up to us to break the cycle and the sort of generational cycle, rather than just putting our hands up being like, I give up. Because it's, for some people who are the most vulnerable right now, I think some of us look at politics as an interest, but then for some it really is survival. We've got vulnerable people in society right now who are going to really struggle in December because of the pandemic. But if we don't stand up for these people, then who is going to? And what I found is, not just me, but what I found is, even when one person speaks up, they're actually speaking up for people that don't have the confidence to do it. So when one person speaks up, you're going to get like 5 other people, 10 other people in the room that are going to have the confidence to speak up, because someone else did. that's why we have leaders. That's why we had Martin Luther King Jr. That's why we have, people that we have today. Even the actor John Boyega, who just taken over, like stormed the media. He was risked his career to speak up for the Black Lives Matter movement. So you need to, if there's no one else speaking up, then you really need to sort of feel the fear and just kind of do it anyway.
And
so thank you so much, Rumi, and thank you to my okay, as in, I think you sorry, thought I heard something.
yeah,
Maybe
I
I
was
didn't.
just going to say, if we all kind of step back and say, for example, Sajid can do this part, it doesn't, I'll wait for her to do it, or Dev can do it, or Sanjeeva can do it. Well, then we're all waiting, aren't we? So who's going to make that step? So
Someone needs to,
somebody
it's like, well, no, we're never gonna get, but I think people are really scared of getting it wrong, especially during the BLM. People are terrified of saying the wrong thing, but it's better to not say the wrong thing. But even if you do say the wrong thing, learn and do better next time. That was the message that was being really taught, because not speaking isn't helping. It's not going to fix anything. It's coming on now. We left last because we really wanted their special guests that are going to come forward now. So I'm really happy to say that we have two special guests, two senior guests that are going to be coming in. We have the president of the Awami League UK, Sultan Mujib, and we also have the advisor of Bongobondhuo Sangskritik Jote, Councillor Abdul Aziz Toki, who are coming in any moment, as they should. The reason why we really wanted to bring in, we're changing it up now with the show, is because we really wanted to bring in more insights on how beneficial this will be.
Who is going to start? Is Sultan Bhai or me? Hello?
Please bear with us because we have some technical issues. We've got a lot of people in, and every Sunday, so everyone's using the Wi-Fi. Please do remember to follow, like, share the content, and we're both on Facebook and YouTube. So really, there's every avenue that someone can watch it. So go harass your friend or your brother or your sister, or let them know that the show is on. The more people we get, the more that we can grow, and we can really improve this show. So thank you so much to my special guests who came on to help us with the show. We have the president of the Awami League UK, Sultan Mahmoud Sharif. How are you today?
Sultan Bhai, unmute your...
I think you're muted. Yeah, you're muted. And we also have Councillor Abdul Aziz Toki, who has been a great help. He is also the coordinator. He is the one also behind the scenes helping us with the show. He's the advisor of Bongobondhuo Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Thank you so much for coming on. Okay, so Sultan Mahmoud Sharif, why do you think that a show like this is so beneficial for society and for both generations within the British Bangladeshi community?
Thank you, Sujuti. The answer is that this is bringing all of you to things that were happening 60, 70, 80 years ago. And it is also depicting the love and affection that was generated amongst people through all the politicians, and the problems some politicians have created, as well as the division between various thinkings about the well-being of the people. I mean, all these politicians had a lot of good in them, and they wanted to do it in a different way. But there, what happens is that a consensus, like we say, an election, like we say, everybody sits in the parliament and discuss and decide what is good for the people. So while that is in mind, Bangabhondo Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was explaining his days, and also bring up characters like Hussain Said Sarwadi, who was trying to help the people during that famine as a minister. And the Marwaris were trying to hoard food. So how he tackled it. That means the leaders have a duty to do this to save people. This is one side of it. And then another side is that the conflict between the younger generation and the older generation, like a hitch between Hossein Said Sarwardi and Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And then a sort of lack of understanding for a moment, and then it was cleared, and Bongobondhu said that all his life he remained devoted to Sarwardi. And also, these characters like Khaja Nazimuddin, Khaja Shahabuddin, and friends like Nuruddin he had, who was very close to him. And then, like he said, that when he came to Calcutta, one day he realized that he had to side with one group. That means, in his mind, that these were the good people who will help people. So, thank you for reading, all three of you. Sujuti, you organized it all, and Devdatta and Sangeeta spoke very well. The line was not, I think, was not very clear. So I was not able to, it was difficult to understand when you were reading. Luckily, I have read the book several times, so I had no problem. But your line needed to be more clear. But thank you. Keep up this spirit, because every time you remind, like we do, every day I remind myself that next day I have to better myself. And if this is what Bangabhondo Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was doing all the time, this is what Hossein Said Sarwardi was doing all the time, to do better for the welfare of the people. So that you went through those lessons in that readings, and which is wonderful. But thank you indeed. Thank you very much, and all three of you, and all those who are associated with you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for the kind words. We did have technical issues, but I just want to say a big thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's been keeping a level head throughout the technical run. These things are going to happen. We're doing it digital, but there's going to be so many moments in your life where things are going to go wrong last minute, and it's really a testament to your character if you can keep a level head, even to the very last minute about you're going to go live, or even my laptop froze in the middle of speaking and I had to just keep going. It's really a testament to your character if you keep that level head. So now, thank you so much for the kind words. Sorry, I'm just pushed for time, so I just really want to get everyone's opinions in and insights in. So Councillor Abdul Aziz Toki, who is our very kind coordinator, we did a show very weeks ago, and was one of the biggest reasons why this show now exists. And he's also the advisor of Bongobondhuo Sangskritik Jote. He's been a great advisor to me and to the young talents that we have today. He's been a great mentor, you can say, to the young talents that we've had on the show. So I wanted to ask you, Councillor Abdullah Toki, the reason why I wanted to do this show is because I really believe that there's so many lessons that we can have from our rich history that is really relevant to the present day. So when I'm reading the book and I'm picking the passages, I always pick passages where there's lessons. And what I feel personally that we hold on very tight to our history, but we're not really willing to sort of look towards the future and really look towards how we can use our history and sort of map out what we want for our future. So why do you think it's so important that we read the unfinished memoirs, and how do you think that we can use the life of Bongobondhu to really teach us the lessons and sort of map out what we want for society as a whole? Because I don't think that the lessons and the stuff that he talks about is only relevant to Bangladesh. I really believe that you can apply it in every part of your life. So how do you think that we can use his book to be a daily lesson to us, as Sultan Sharif said, that to be better every day?
Thank you very much, Sejuti, and thank you, Sultan Sharif Bhai, for your contribution. And I am sure the knowledge and expertise Sultan Bhai have and what he said, something he has linked up with your knowledge anyway. And Sejuti, you are brilliant, fantastic. I'm not analyzing anything about your presentation. What I am saying, you did very, very well. And your guests are really brilliant. When you are narrating, I was really watching and hearing your narration. It was completely different than the Bengali version. In the Bengali version, we are discussing most about the Bangladesh politics, political connection with the leaders, politicians. But you have touched something really, really amazing. Really amazing. Passing knowledge. Rumi said passing knowledge. Deb is fantastic. I was a bit worried because probably he was the youngest participation in your show, in our show. But
Yeah.
his reading is more conscious, clear, and fantastic and brilliant. And Deb, thank you very much. And Sanjida, I know you are struggling about the names, the Bengali names. Sometimes we could not pronounce anyway. Anyway, but your reading, your analysis was narration was really fantastic and brilliant. The question you asked me, the answer is with you.
Yeah.
You are answering this question every day. Anyway, every day when you are discussing, you are narrating, you are talking about this book, the answer is there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in fact, this book is, I always said, this is the Bible of politics. I don't know you will accept or not accept, but I said, Sharif Bhai, this is the Bible of politics. And I always suggesting our politician to go through this book. And they should see how Bongobondhuo Sheikh Mujibur Rahman has become the father of nation,
Yeah.
how he has leading the nation, how he was become an international leader. So this is the book. I always go through this book and I discover something new. Always I discover something new. Even today's narration, I have really amazingly I have got something from your discussion. The passing knowledge, you say, not the elderly people. Young people are saying the passing knowledge, connectivity with people is really you are making Sajuti, you people are making history. This is the history. Young people have different perspective in this country. They sometimes not bother about the Bangladesh politics, and they never bothered about the Bangladesh history either. I always said, Rumi touched these things, the black history. We have a glorious history. This history, I always said, I was school governor for many years, and I am still in my political field. I said, we have to enact the black history with the mainstream history. Though children have their glorious history, if they learn and know their glorious history, then they will do better in this country. They will better in this country. So this history can be connected with our younger generation, and you are doing the right job. You are doing the right job. You are so courageous. You have taken these advantages to become the leader, ambassador of this work. So this is incredible. I give my wholehearted thanks to you, Sejuti, and your team. This is brilliant. I wish you all the best. And you will be the pioneer. And I am sure lots of young generation of our community will follow you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your kind words. I mean, really, it is a team effort. You know, as I said, this show is nothing without the participants. I learned so much from our young talents, as well as Rumi's been on twice, and she's always given such like groundbreaking insights, something that's really like grounding and humbling, but also I learned so much from the guests that we have. I learned so much from our young talents. It's probably the best part of my job, the best part of what I've done in the last few years. And I really want a platform where we can speak about anything honestly and really give thought-provoking opinions and talk about stuff that people aren't willing to talk about, because that's what history is all about. It's all about taking that first step and being brave enough to make that social change. And it starts with conversations. It starts with communication. You have to have those difficult conversations to have real change. And I really want to give a big thank you to Dev and Sanjita for bringing forth difficult topics that we can't really, that we may not have the courage to talk about within a normal space, but it's so important to talk about it live to a whole audience. And I was going to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement with Rumi, but Sanjita brought it up first. I'm so happy that you did. To see that initiative come in is really, really true. And I think we can learn so much from the unfinished memoirs, but we can also learn from all different parts of history, because it comes together. And once we really learn, we're not going to have that platform. So I just want to say a big thank you to every single one of our participants. I'm well aware that we had technical issues, but you kept it level head and you kept going no matter what. And I'm just really, really grateful. It's been a rocky road to get this episode going, but I'm very grateful. Thank you to the kind words to Sultan Mahmoud Sharif and Councillor Asif Koki. You are yourselves, you are pioneers, and you're passing on the torch to our younger talents. And I could not be more grateful for your guidance and your support. And I want to say a big thank you to the Mukti Online channel, who've been helping us, as well as our technical support and editing by Najrul Islam Okib. He is the real deal. He really helps us when things go wrong, and he's a great center point for us. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's been liking, commenting, and sharing, seeing your comments come up, supporting the young talents as they're reading and really championing them on. This is what's going to elevate them. We have to be the ones to really elevate them. And on that note, I want to say a big thank you and have an amazing Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjiti.